So we definitely have a guest speaker in our midst that speaks to everything and hopefully will provide us with some of the answers. And Francois, thank you so much for joining us. Francois is the Chief Technology Officer at Netstar. So a better fourth industrial revolutionary persona we couldn't really get, which for those of you that don't know, Netstar is a subsidiary of Altron. And I think that he spent most of his working career in the technology sector, so I challenge you to ask any questions related. But more recently, he's heading up the technology team at Netstar, and they're spearheading the group's growth strategies in terms of, and I don't know if I've pronounced, is it LOT sector? Is that the correct way to, or is it IoT? Okay, so the IoT sector, and I think from an agility perspective, as you know, from DaVinci's perspective, we speak about agile, aligned, engaged, etc. And I think in these type of organizations, agility becomes key, I would assume. And we look really forward to engaging with you today and hearing your sort of views and enlightening us a little around that topic.
Yeah, thank you. So do I have to come and sit
Yes,
here
you
as
have
well?
to sit in the hot seat. Do you want to sit? Because I'm going to move. Okay.
So I hope you guys are going to be a bit more gentle on me in the Q&A. I fell for the Raymond a few times. The grilling is heavy.
It's just being curious, that's all.
I was also trying to make sense of this format, so I went Googling a little bit.
It's a colloquium kind of format.
Correct, yeah. So I came across colloquium, I came across Symposium, and I came across conference, whatever. And I like the Symposium one because there's an ancient Greek definition of a symposium that says a drinking party. You know what I'm saying?
That's after.
Yeah, so I think we heard a lot about the fourth industrial revolution today, but it means different things for different people, and for us in the industry, or for us specifically in the industry that we're in, it's really all about the fusion of the technologies. It's a coming together of things like AI, big data, machine learning, and so on, sort of fueled by the exponential growth that we've seen lately in computing power, in just the interconnectivity of data, that makes it possible for businesses to now transform their business processes. And I think at Netstar or at Altron, we realized that a consequence of the fourth industrial revolution is that you need to embrace it and transform your business processes, or digitize your business processes. Otherwise, you will be left behind. But I think in the process of digitizing your business processes, yes, there will be jobs that are affected. I think you already saw lately in the news, Standard Bank, that through the digitization of their business processes, had to close down several branches and so on. And in our world, it is not different. I'm going to touch on one of the applications of our technology is the analysis of video data. We started off with this video data bureau many years ago with a human being sitting looking at TV screens, sort of analyzing and interpreting what they're seeing on the TV screen. But that is not scalable. You need to apply technology, and that's what the fourth industrial revolution and the fusion of technologies bring to us. Using sort of AI techniques and machine learning, we have now taught our systems to interpret what they're seeing on the TV screen. Does this now mean that our digital inspector is going to be without a job? No, the jobs are changing. I think where a digital inspector was able to look at, let's say, 10 video clips per vehicle per day, they are now able of looking at 100 clips or 1,000 clips per vehicle per day. So their productivity is improved. But more importantly, I think also if you look at these kind of machine learning processes, the machine does not learn by itself. I think it does not have to go to a higher institution to learn. It learns through the practical examples given to it by an operator. So as we driving this sort of video analytics forward, for example's sake, we started with very, very basic stuff. Can the camera, for example's sake, the picture be analyzed to see whether that camera is in good working order, is still looking in the right direction and so on. So those are things that you have to teach the AI. But as you go forward, you can now start teaching the AI to say, okay, well, count how many people gets on the bus. Or, is the same people getting onto the bus also getting off the bus? Have they got off the bus and back on again without buying a ticket? So in all of those processes, so it is an ongoing process, and our digital inspectors are now reskilled, and we're given the tools now not to analyze but actually to teach the AI machine. So I'm just using that as an example. But I think if I can just get back to the topic that I wanted to talk about, the future of IoT or Internet of Things in the connected car world. I think we must probably need to start with the definition of IoT. I think for us in the industry that we're in, we would like to claim that we were most probably the forerunners of IoT, certainly in the mobility space, because I think our industry sort of started 20 years ago, and it started driven by crime. There was a need to recover stolen vehicles, and to recover a stolen vehicle, you have to have a device in a car. And if you look at the sort of informal definition of IoT, it's machines talking to machines, devices talking to devices, and devices and machines talking to human beings. So if you go back 20 years ago, we had devices in the vehicle talking to machines, our back end, and the back end being presented to humans, and the humans interpreting the data that they see, and in some cases talking back to the machines, activating units and so on, so that we could recover the vehicles. So I think that in its very simplicity was probably the first of sort of big scale mobile applications of IoT. But I think we've moved on from that world. I think the concept of IoT has grown, and I think the term IoT was really a fairly new, or it's really a fairly new term that was sort of invented by the industry that brought us RF or narrowband RF technology. So narrowband RF technology, just for those people that's not technically astute, are really technology that allows very small packets of data to be efficiently delivered via the RF network using sort of a low-powered network. And in South Africa, we now have such networks in place. So I think, first of all, we as a company had such a network, a national network in place that could transfer small data packets for the last 20 years or so. But sort of more recently, the sort of guys that spearheaded the RF small data packet technology is standards such as LoRa, or companies in South Africa such as Sigfox, and what this new narrowband small packet technology has allowed us to do is to very efficiently have lots of machines talking to lots of machines. I think if you look at the technology that we use traditionally in stolen vehicle recovery, it was very expensive. It was based on GSM networks and even our own RF network. The devices were very expensive. But now you have sort of sub $1 components that you can put in a fridge, or you can put it in a geyser, and you can switch the geyser on and off, or you can measure the temperature of the fridge, and from that you can interpret the data to decide whether the fridge is full or empty. So now using the sort of cheaper small packet technology, we're starting to see a proliferation of devices talking to devices, and already in the many millions, and predictions of many billions of devices talking to devices in the very near future. But I think if you look at IoT, it's not only restricted to the sort of narrowband small packet kind of, my chair telling me there's somebody sitting on it. Incidentally, we just went through that. We're busy moving all of our opcos into a single campus, and we have to move 12,000 people into a single campus, and we used our own internal IoT technology to determine how much time do you spend on your seat every day. So we stuck a sensor over every seat just to see.
Tell people.
Yeah, we did, and it was quite scary.
Yeah, change management was a very difficult thing in that space.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Change management was
So you
quite
get-
hard.
Yeah, 'cause
we had to
I'm-
communicate a lot.
So what did you, I mean, did you tell people that they were being monitored or?
We did, and we had a lot of friction. You'd get there and the device would be unplugged.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It wasn't a very
so how
easy-
do you kind of link productivity to that, or because
No.
somebody can be sitting and doing nothing the whole day?
So we're drifting a bit off the topic, but the sort of modern trend in architecture and in workspace is exactly what you touched on earlier. I think it's flexible work hours and so on, and people are already embracing that. So I think the idea on the new campus is that nobody would actually have a desk that they own. It will be a hot seat, and in order to do hot seat planning, you need to know what is the usage of people using their workspaces. So yeah, it was but an interesting
And
little
what was
essay.
the general outcome? How many
Yeah.
times a day? I mean, hours a day?
Yeah, so it was interesting. So I think a workplace consists of nomads, people that do not spend a lot of time at their desk, and then sort of people that do spend a lot of time. So if you look in the finance department, typically people sit behind their desk from 8 to 5. But if you look in the sales department, they spend 7 hours a month at their desk. So giving them a desk is a bit excessive. Any case.
So we're going to take away this.
He's there, that's why I said it's like having an office just us.
Okay, so back to the topic, the future of IoT and the connected world. So maybe what I'll do, I'll take you on a short little journey, and I'll talk about the connected car of the past, the connected car of today, and the connected car of the future. So if you look at the connected car of the past, it is really that SVR, or stolen vehicle recovery scenario, that I created or that I pictured for you. But coupled with that, I think we also started, because we could now geolocate a vehicle on a specific spot, we could start offering location-based services or geospatial services to our customers, and we started showing them trip data and tax logbooks, and in the fleet space we were able to do route planning and route adherence planning. And as the sort of technology grew, it gave us the capability to start mining more and more data from the connected vehicle. And I think even the insurance companies embraced it. I think a big development overseas here, it is starting to take off. I think there's one company in particular, Discovery, that's sort of leading the pack, but most of the other insurance companies are getting on board. But it's the whole concept of usage-based insurance, where your premium is based on how you drive, and your user behavior is monitored. And it sounds quite intrusive. Our data scientist ran a study quite recently, Quentin, about 3 or 4 months ago, where we actually had 3 control groups. I think the first group was the group of people that we had a driver behavior monitoring device in their vehicle, but they did not know that. And the second group was people that had a driver monitoring device, and they knew it, but they weren't incentivized. And then this last group is where the insurance people play, where they were monitored and incentivized to drive better. In other words, they were offered cheaper premiums and so on if they drive better. And I think that it was quite interesting. The first 2 control groups, the result was no different. When a guy drives badly, he actually gets quite proud of it if he has a system telling him he's driving like an idiot. But when you start putting incentives on top of it, then driver behavior do change. And I think that is what the insurance companies are banking on going forward into the future. Anyway, so that's but I think even in our fleet space, the requirements became a lot more sophisticated. If you look at our big fleet customers, it started off dots on a map and route planning and all those sort of geospatial services. But the space where we're now finding ourselves in is our big fleet customers and mines and so on are saying, don't tell us that an event has taken place. Tell us that the event is going to take place. They want to move from the historical to the predictive. And to do that, you have to embrace these new technologies such as AI and big data. You've got to have a data model that's big enough that you can predict the future. And the data is so massive. Just to put it in context, in our company, up to 5 years ago, we were ingesting about 20 million data points per day from all of our vehicles. Just in the last few years, it's grown to, and at the beginning of the year, we were already sitting at 200 million data points a day. And today we are sitting at 250 million data points a day, so it's growing exponentially. But all of this data gives us the ability now to build quite sophisticated prediction models and that's where our future is moving. So if you look at the sort of more consumer space, or the man in the street kind of space, it's also moving on from insurance. I think now that you have connected vehicles, you're expecting more infotainment from your vehicle. In the past, you had your radio and you could listen to 702. But now, because broadband connectivity has become, mobile broadband connectivity has become a reality. I think, if you look at all the big telcos, they're rolling out 4G networks, they're rolling out 5G networks, and we unfortunately, it's taken a long time for government to free up the spectrum. It is still an issue for these broadband networks to roll out more aggressively, but it's starting to happen, and that has brought the cost of data down, and the technology is now in a space where we can offer infotainment into the vehicle. So again, in our world, what is the application of that? The application is that we can now work with the OEMs, or the original vehicle manufacturers, and start putting this technology in the vehicle, including broadband connectivity, that will allow you to be more productive in the vehicle, or your passengers. Hopefully you're not going to be doing your Excel spreadsheets behind the steering wheel, but your passengers can be more productive, and they can be entertained at the same time. Andiswa is going to shoot me now. She's the head of our PR department, but the day after tomorrow we're going to be announcing a very big project, so this is pre-release of the news. But we have just signed a partnership with one of the biggest manufacturers of vehicles in South Africa, that we will put this kind of technology in all of their vehicles, whether it's imported or locally produced vehicles, and it's done in partnership with one of the biggest telcos in South Africa as well. So these are not futuristic, it's happening, and it's happening now. And it will transform the way that you now behave in your vehicle. This car company will now offer you Netflix in your vehicle, and they will give you a Netflix bundle in your vehicle. So these are exciting times. So if I look at the connected car of today, in the consumer space, it's all about infotainment, and getting value from your data. You want your driver score to be a product of value to you. You want to be able to negotiate your premium with the insurance company, and you want to take that driver score to the car rental company, and you want to get a discount for car rental company. So they're embracing this technology and what the data is telling us.
Drive themselves. Just
So
someone watching Netflix.
So it's funny that you should mention that. So I've covered the connected car of the past, the connected car of today. So the connected car of the future will be exactly that. I think everybody is looking forward to this autonomous driving thing. And again, a lot of people believe that it is still in the science fiction space, but it's not. It is starting to happen as we speak. There are already built into certain vehicles elements of autonomous driving. So certain Scandinavian cars will already, if you're following distance between you and the car ahead of you is becoming problematic, it will slow down your car and so on. For self-driving cars to become a reality, IoT is an absolute necessity. You need to have devices talking to devices and cars arbitrating what they should do next. It is quite a scary thought. One of the products that we just launched earlier this year, very exciting project, it was for the mines, and when you look at these massive trucks on the mines, those wheels are the size of small houses. They can't see pedestrians, and they can't see other smaller vehicles and so on. So we developed an IoT technology for them that every pedestrian on the mine, every vehicle on the mine is kitted with one of these IoT devices, and these devices continuously talk to each other, and they're geospatially aware, but they're also directionally aware, so they can compute a potential collision, and they will warn the driver of this big truck there's a potential collision, and if the driver does not intervene, it will actually bring the truck to a standstill. It sounds quite easy to do, but the mathematics was just absolutely horrendous.
Bike was included also.
Yeah.
Bike was included also.
Absolutely.
Free riding bikes.
So I have to just say for the record, I'm also a biker. I own 4 Harley Davidsons. So my Harley Davidsons is the first test bed for this kind of technology. Yeah. So.
Brian? Sorry.
Yeah, just one of the interesting things on autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles. I was doing some work on before the Industrial Revolution, came upon this observation that if in trying to program an autonomous vehicle, for a long time they were working on decision theory in terms of how people drive, what are the decisions that you have to take to drive, and they found it very difficult to get the program right. They changed their strategy using simple prediction theory. And what they did is that they analyzed what good drivers did, and they used that as the basis for the model.
So I think the other interesting thing is also that in an autonomous vehicle or in autonomous vehicle, it is actually not an autonomous decision. You know, I think when you sit in the vehicle, you bring your past knowledge of that particular road segment with you in your memory, where a device doesn't necessarily have that experience. So you have to bring that experience to it. So we're now integrating into map data and so on, and the camber of the road, and we're integrating into weather bureaus to get the, you know, a human being can see the clouds. It can, and based on past experience, it can predict that it's about to rain and the road is going to be wet, or it just rained and the road's going to be slippery, more slippery than usual. So all of those experiences have to be brought in dynamically to affect the model on how that car is driving. So I think, you know, we're still very far off from asking Siri to take us to our workplace, but I think the sort of simplistic models are already happening. I was at the university in Sweden last year, you know, and what they concentrated on is better control of traffic density. So a simplistic self-driving model is when you're in traffic, you know, let all the cars accelerate at the same time and the same tempo and so on, to keep, you know, the sort of rubber band effect down to a minimum. And I also see applications of that in big fleets of trucks. You know, when you go down to Durban, you have a row of trucks. You know, those trucks could be interconnected to reduce the following distance and therefore increase the capacity on the road. So those will most probably be the first simplistic applications. But it's happening and it's real and it's now. So so that really brings me sort of towards the end. I think from our side, our world is a bit topsy-turvy at the moment. We've collected all of this data. This data can tell us an enormous amount of things. You know, what we've done is we've given our data to various tertiary institutions and other big data analytical institutions and so on, and just asked them to make sense of our data, to see what insights they can get out of the data. And some of it was just phenomenal. You know, one of the institutions that looked at our data could fingerprint from the data who was driving the vehicle, but more importantly, they could also tell you, look, this is the usual driver of the vehicle, but he's driving differently. He's either drunk or he's fatigued. You know. So this is where it's all moving. But I think what we've also found is, you know, just in our data is becoming relevant to the retail space, for example's sake. You know, we have you know, one of the insights that one of the geospatial companies found in our data is they could predict the retail pattern of that particular driver, and loyalties has changed. You know, he parked at the Spa shopping center on a Friday afternoon, every Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and then suddenly he switched to the other side of the shopping center where there happens to be a Pick and Pay. So he switched allegiances, and something triggered that. And to the retail industry, this is extremely valuable data. So just in closing, you know.
So they're harnessing, they're capitalizing on this memory bank as
correct. And from our side, you know, I think we want to enrich our data with data sources from elsewhere so that we can get closer to that model that is required for autonomous vehicles. So we integrating other people's data, they're integrating our data. And I think the sort of the parting remark that I want to leave you with is a quote or two. I think Mark Zuckerberg was quoted to say that data is the new oil, and The Economist was quoted in one of the headlines as big data is the world's most valuable resource. You know, so I think companies in this new fourth industrial revolution are becoming more data centric, and data is the new king going forward. But with it brings moral questions. You know, it brings data privacy questions. It brings, you know, a whole bunch of problems that we need to solve, you know, and maybe I can end on that note.
Thank you very much, Francois. Thank you very much.
So I think quite a few people have asked if we can leave open time for our guest speakers for questions, because many of you feel we end and then we end.
Abruptly,
so we've left quite a big gap for you guys to be able to ask the questions to our colleagues.
Well, if I may,
So
just ask, Quentin maybe wants to add a little bit just to complement what Francois is saying.
Yeah, I think what Francois started with talking about the AI and the computer vision space. Tagging the data is something that our bureau has now been trained to do, and I think that that is the reason why data is becoming the new oil. Why it is becoming the most valuable thing is because it is what will train the artificial intelligence of the future that will drive decision making on your behalf, or just assisting you in your personal assistance, your own personal assistant, that kind of thing. But I think one of the most difficult thing is it is easy to ingest all of this data. We've built a platform that ingests, as Francois said, 250 million positions a day at rates of 4,000 messages per second, and but to egress this data, to actually get it out and understand it, that's where, as Francois said, we need to engage tertiary education, people who are still doing their masters, their PhDs, to come and fetch this data from us and really find the value in it for us and for themselves.
I think the complexity is how do you mine this data?
Yes.
It's all there, you can gather it.
Correct.
Good. How do you mine it to inform decisions?
That's it.
That's most important. And you alluded to something, marketing in my area, that they're using to understand consumer behavior. Exactly this technology, because they've gone on the days where they're going to interview consumers, how's your pet? They monitor, they can tell you exactly, how you did and why you did, went the other way, as you said, parked the other side and went to Pick and Pay instead of going to ShopRite.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, anyway, very interesting. We had a question?
Yeah, two.
Okay.
I'll
Sharon,
go
go ahead.
before my husband. I found that very, very interesting, and we started off initially talking about the fact that the hijackings and all of that, and there certainly are huge escalating numbers of trucks being hijacked, etc., motor cars, etc., etc. How do you think you could use the technologies to prevent that? For example, could you use, and I'm going to be very stupid here to say it like that, but like memory foam, somebody knows that I'm sitting in my seat, but I get dragged out and somebody else gets in. That sort of trigger, or triggers on the side of the car, that there's an approach that can actually recognize a metal instrument like a gun or something. Are there ways and means that you could use the same technologies, artificial intelligence, to preempt hijackings, preempt dangerous situations for drivers, etc.?
So, and again, I'm going to be extremely brutal. I think the company had its origins in finding the vehicle, not protecting the driver. But as we're moving into the future, we're starting to see that changing. I think there's a huge demand on personal safety and so on. So we are starting to provide personal safety and roadside assist kind of technologies and so on. And exactly what you're saying, we can. So our data model on where crimes take place is 20 years old. So we've got an enormous amount of data, and we can predict with a reasonable amount of accuracy. On a Friday night at that intersection, Witkoppen and what have you, there's going to be 3 hijacks, and it's going to be between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock. So we can advise you not to go and drive through that
I
area.
live near this.
Thanks, John.
3 questions, but the first one is just forgive my sense of humor. Self-drive cars. Have you taken into account the big variable? It's called the Johannesburg taxi. You'll never be able to predict that. The 2 questions that are genuine is, one is, you might like to know, I've been a loyal Netstar customer since the inception of Netstar.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that's a good one.
I have had an older technology unit in
Yes.
Have you, and I haven't upgraded simply because the cost of upgrading and changing all that. I know that you've got 3 or 4 different types of units. Have you ever considered is the technology there? Is it easy to do to have a unit that can do everything, that you start off electronically saying, okay, fine, this customer just wants the basic unit. So we give them a unit, and that's their base price, and that's what they get as a package deal. Okay, well, after a couple of years, they like the service, I want to upgrade. Okay, fine, click a switch, computer, zip, and it's upgraded. Now it goes a little bit extra, and then so on down the line. So in 10 years' time, instead of upgrading the unit, it's a case of just clicking a switch and you get to the next level of security, assistance, all that sort of. You understand what I'm
No, absolutely.
The other one is the 5G technology,
Yes.
and the concerns internationally, because I'm very interested in the international space, of the dangers and the limitations of 5G technology in terms of the effect on the atmosphere, the effect on the environment, as it were, and the effect on the communication systems that are likely to be, or navigation systems that are likely to be affected by that.
Okay. So maybe just
what ideas can
yeah.
you
So
give?
just to answer your first question, yes, very much so. I think when I became the CTO of the company, we had a portfolio of 21 different products, very confusing to customers and so on, and this difficult upgrade. So we collapsed it into a chameleon product, for lack of a better name, that provides you with that upgrade path. But you still have those people with very, very basic needs. All they want is their vehicle back when it gets stolen. They're not interested in protecting their loved ones or knowing when their son is leaving the pub and arriving home. And they just want their vehicle back when it gets stolen. So for that, we use very, very basic small packet technology. But for the rest of it, it's now one product, and in theory, we should be, if you're already on that platform, you could be upgraded, and that product is quite futuristic. I talk about fusion of technology, so that's exactly it. A product like that has got accelerometers on board, and it's got GPS on board, and it's got RF technology on board, it's got GSM technology on board. So we can hybridize that into future products that we can't even envisage at this point in time. Come back to your second question. I'm probably the wrong guy to talk to around that. I think I'm not a specialist in RF spectrum technologies and its associated dangers. I just take solace in the fact that when cell phones came out, they all predicted in 10 years' time we'll all die of brain cancer, and it did not happen. So I'm trusting that the regulators and so on of these technologies will take these things into account, and hopefully it will be safe technology going forward.
Because that's the big problem at the moment.
Yes.
Where the satellites are
Correct.
All right, can we take Brian there, please?
Francois, a question for
Yes.
you. Does hardware constitute a security risk?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Yeah, so I had the pleasure, and by the way, that was fascinating. I think we just don't understand the scale of technology in this country. When I was quite proud of the fact the previous company that I headed up, we had 500 engineers at one point. But Huawei invited us to their campus just outside of Shenzhen, and there was 28,000 people on site, of which more than half of them were under the age of 35, and they were all graduate or postgraduate engineers. It's just mind-boggling the amount of technology. But I must say, I came away from that campus feeling that it is a company of substance, and it's a credible company. But yeah, so you have to look at the history, where they came from or whatever, and the Americans are fearful of it. But we as a group has done our due diligence, and we are a Huawei reseller, of telecommunications infrastructure. So yeah, I trust them.
Thank you.
Hi, Francois. Interesting presentation. Two questions. One deals with competition. The concept of sharing data with potential competitors.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you are sharing data with institutions and competitors.
Yes.
How do you address this issue of competitors and privacy? What do you keep privacy? And then the second question is this idea of protection of IP. In this world of Internet of Technology, in your industry, is there a value in protecting IP or not?
So, first, on your first question, I think we're moving into a world of co-opetition. I think, and it's a murky space because you can't get a full file of the Competitions Commission. But we can't claim to make we're not the perfect expert to make sense of the data. So we're finding more and more that we're starting to offer data as a service to companies that previously would have been considered our competition. So we have launched a platform, data as a service and platform as a service, and IoT as a service. So we're currently doing data feeds where we don't interpret the data, we give the raw data to the insurance company, we give the raw data to companies that specializes in transportation, logistics, and so on, and they can make sense of that data because they've been in that research field all of their lives and so on. We can't be those experts. So these companies used to be our competitors. They are now the consumers of our data, and they in fact our customers. So we see more and more of that. So we will have to find our space, and our space might be that we are the aggregators of data, and we're the distributors of data, and we'll be the data switch to other service providers. So that is the future that we see going forward for ourselves. Come to your second question, the protection of IP. So I've been involved in IP all my life, and I've always been a sort of promoter of the concept that by the time that you try and protect your IP through formal means or whatever, it's too late. You need to just be at the forefront of technology all of the time. You've got to innovate faster than your competitor. You've got to launch faster than your competitor, and let them copy you because it will put them behind you. So I'm not a big promoter of formal protection of IP through formal instruments such as patents and so on.
Thanks,
So
Francois.
can I take a stab at that second question as well? Sorry. So what we're finding, so my side is a much more technical side, right? So what we're finding is that we're using a lot more open source technologies inside our own space. And open source technologies are the opposite of protection of intellectual property. But what happens is, it's how you put these things together. That becomes your intellectual property. And that becomes your competitive advantage. But it's like Francois says, you'd rather drive it as a competitive advantage than try and drive it as an intellectual property that you want to protect on the side.
Interesting concept.
Francois, to what extent do you integrate information from bodycams and dashcams, which are becoming so popular today, particularly with regards to making motoring and cycling safe?
Yes. Yeah, so we have launched a Cycle Safe product, but again, the focus is more focused around the security aspect and the safety aspect of it. These bicycles are very expensive, they get stolen and so on, and they need to be recovered. These devices do have a panic button, so if you're cycling in a remote area, you can push a panic button. We probably won't fly a helicopter to come and find you. But yeah, so I think, within our Altron group, it's a big drive for us. I think our IoT platform, the big data platform that Quentin has built, is not unique. A unique asset to Netstar. It is in fact the IoT platform for the whole of Altron group. And within Altron, we're driving very, very hard into smart cities and the specific technology that you just described, integrating body cams for paramedical people back into AI engines so that we can interpret on the back end what the paramedical person is experiencing in the field and so on. So yeah, all of these things are happening elsewhere in the group, but the one common point is, that we all share the same open source data platform.
Could I ask, sorry.
All right, okay.
After the dog.
Sure.
I just want to ask, possibly you will think it's a cheeky question, but we're a higher education institution. What sort of training would your staff need, or education training courses, programs, massive open online course? What sort of training would we, for example, be able to offer a company like yours? And if Bill Fenter is still the head of Altron, well, he started his study career at the technical college of which I used to be the principal, and started as an artisan. So, and look what he built. So what I'm saying is, where and at which levels would training be required to meet all of these requirements? And I'm presuming it wouldn't be lengthy, long courses, but it would be short courses with immediacy that could be applied with the new technologies. Would it be both?
100%. I think part of the thesis is how do you prepare people for the fourth industrial revolution, and are they teaching them correctly at the universities and so on. I think there's a lot of postgraduate work that needs to be done, and exactly that. It is in that space of highly concentrated, very specialized training. And I think as a group, we've actually had a long history with the DaVinci Institute. I think Bill Fenter himself started the Bill Fenter Academy, and through that we designed courses with various tertiary institutions. We're running system engineering program at Stellenbosch University. In fact, this big data model that we built, when we did the initial research around best practices, we had the choice. We could go out and buy that everybody else is doing, going onto the Amazon platform or whatever, or we could build something unique that is scalable and unique to ourselves. So we engaged with the Stellenbosch University, a bunch of postgraduate students. We rented a house for them there in Dorp Street. We gave them the equipment to do the research, and once they came up with a model that was viable, we internalized it and we built our own big data model. So I think we have a history of engaging because we understand the importance of engaging with special institutions. I think with Bill Venter and his two sons stepping out of the business and the ease of transformation, we're busy consolidating the business under a single Altron strategy. We were discussing it just before the session. The sort of academy side of it has fallen a little bit behind, but I think in a year ahead or whatever, we'll start picking up those threads again. So I think that the DaVinci Institute was very much part of our journey in the past, and it will probably, institutions like the DaVinci Institute could very much be a part of our future.
Range of programs, short
range of programs.
From the lowest level to the highest level, all of that.
Well, most of it was postgraduate. Most of it was sort of
postgraduate. So designs and builds your systems.
Yes.
The robotics needed and
correct.
Is that only postgrad? Or, sorry,
no. So what we also have is.
I'm looking at the skill set.
Yes.
That would be required of people who typically would work in an area such as your company's type of area.
Yes.
Because so that employees are produced or opportunities created.
Correct.
For young people, unemployed young people, maybe to have a step in the door, short skills programs, etc. So to me, but that's a conversation.
So we run programs like that. So we have a program running down in Durban where we do computer literacy training, and we take in between 25 to 50 students a year, and it's a one-year program. And we've had 100% for 3 years in a row, 100% success rates in placing those students into jobs at the end of that program. So we do it at that level as well. And of those 50 students per year, I would say at least a third of them gets placed within the group itself. So these programs do work, and they're of benefits to the company as well. So we're more than happy to engage in programs like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
There are three elements that are at play. The laptop, it's a cell phone, it's a car. For a modern person like myself,
yes.
I will have one of them on me at any given time. Now I had to talk about integration of gadgets, so to speak. And I'm looking at the police on one end, and I'm wondering how this information that you have could directly be linked to the police and actually create a safer environment for the community.
Yeah.
Because you most likely know where those three things are at any given time. Should there be a technology that can speak to the three elements, you should be able to actually become a better policing department for the country.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to say your car is here, your laptop is there, your cell phone is over there, and you can find it with a GPRS to the 2 centimeter radius. So I'm just wondering, in terms of your expansion and your social responsibility, particularly looking at the policing section, how are you intending, maybe in the near future, and the 4IR you're talking about, are you planning to take over the police department and maybe think in that direction?
No, it is a very valid question. I think when we started Netstar vehicle recovery, we found that we were more effective than the police in recovering vehicles, and that is still the case. We're still using our own technology to recover vehicles. I think one of our competitive companies are using the police and so on, but part of our competitive advantage is that we use our own technology to find vehicles. And our focus is on finding the vehicle. That's why I said, we can't take the place of the police. So in the early days, our helicopter pilots used to be cowboys or whatever, and they would fly in low and they would try and block the vehicle and try and arrest the thief. We're no longer in that space. We find the vehicle, we return the vehicle to its rightful owner. As a consequence, we sometimes uncover rings of crooks and criminals and so on. But it is not a focal point for us. I think we won't put our staff in danger to do the work of the police. And also, I think there's a relation of trust with our customer. So what you're saying is very, very true. We've got intimate details, and sometimes people try to abuse us. We will have a wife phoning on a Friday afternoon and say, "Where's my husband?" And we'll ask them, "Where's your police case number?" And without a case number, lady, we can't help you. Yeah, so it is not our job, but we certainly sit on overspeeding information. We sit on location-based information, whatever that could be valuable to police. But
I'm raising that because that raises another model of businesses on the 4IR story. That since this information can be shared, maybe we're looking at a new innovation of creating new businesses that can harvest that content and then create a support service to the greater policing department and to utilize that kind of information to create safer communities.
100%, and it's 100% technically feasible, but I think one has to do it within the context of the protection of private privacy and private information.
Yeah, they have to make money. They still have to make money. They have to make money.
Does anyone else have questions?
Yeah, any more questions?
So I just want to ask one question. I wanted to ask the type of people that work in the technical space, etc. What type of attributes do they have that make them, able to innovate these kind of technologies and actually remain innovative in that space? Because I assume from what you've said, they've got to stay on top of their game the whole time, creating new products and ideas, and that would require quite a sort of interesting environment that people would have to work in. So I was just interested to know what you look for in somebody, and also what type of an environment you create that allows people to be that innovative.
So I think there's So to speak to the first part of your question, what do we look for in people? One of the fundamental things we have to look for in today's time is people who are willing and able to self-learn. So we find that graduate engineers have gone through the process of having to drive themselves and learn on their own in some cases, and that's a very big fundamental attribute for us, because technology is constantly changing, right? So in our lives now, I mean, maybe 10 years ago, we were in a situation where technology would change. Well, let's take Microsoft, for instance. Microsoft would release a SQL Server version every 3 years. They are now releasing one every 6 months. So you can imagine how much quicker people have to adapt to new technologies to stay on top of things. And so that is one of the attributes we look for, is that self-learning ability. And then I think in the environment that we create, we follow agile management practices, and that allows for self-organizing teams. It moves away from the old management style of command and control. So and that just enables them to innovate on their own, and then we encourage that, of course. We also have an innovation program at Altron called the CEO's Challenge, where we pay, where the CEO sponsors 100,000 Rand to the whole company to find that one idea that drives. And I'm very proud that at Netstar, last year we had two finalists, and this year we had the actual winner, and we had 2 finalists in the end. And so at Netstar we have a very innovative culture, and we drive that through the agile management processes.
Can I come in here? Innovation and obsolescence, I think they go more or less hand in hand because of the time it takes to do R&D and to come up with an innovation. And no sooner you've done that, you find that you've got to start the process all over again. So how do you manage that? Because there's a lot of investment now in R&D.
But that's why this agile process is a reiterative process, so you invent and throw away all the time, so it is not a process with a beginning or an end. We release a viable product every six weeks.
You've got to be very agile.
You've got to be very agile. You've got to be very agile.
Yeah. So you've got to be agile in two senses, right? You've got to be agile in what are your customers, because their requirements and needs are changing.
Dynamics.
And then you have to be agile in the fact that the technologies that you're using are fundamentally changing as well. And you have to be monitoring your competition.
But I think the sort of open source world has been God's gift to industry. I think now you have collaboration across the globe in new innovation and driving new innovation, and it just made our job so much easier.
Knowledge space is becoming open source now anyway,
yes,
so your access to research, it's cutting edge research all day.
What's interesting though is that if you look at the technologies that we're using from the open source space, they are developed by what we consider technology companies, but their fundamental business model is actually marketing. So Google is one of them. Google is open sourcing everything. They principle of open sourcing everything. But all they actually do is market. They build technologies which they open source because they're not part of their intellectual property. They'll open source it because they're just focusing on the marketing. Facebook is another one. Facebook open sourced the database engine that we use, and essentially they're a marketing company. They open sourced the technology because they wanted other people's contributions. And I think that model of other people's contributions working together in an open source space is probably the future of technology in my mind.
Yeah. So,
It's maybe also the idea of you maybe giving maybe access to your data to other institutions like universities, that could actually add value to your, to be innovative. And then in the sense that, like for instance, once they go out there and they do a trend analysis and mine your data, they'll come up with certain things that we probably were not able to be, like market people will be able to say, okay, if you increase this, maybe there's a reduction done on those lines, which you mentioned earlier on.
Correct.
That will help a lot.
Correct. And we use that also to help postgraduates in their projects. I think we did a program last year with KZN. We gave them just a set of data with no expected outcomes. We basically just said to them, you tell us what insight you can get from the data. So we gave it, we exposed the data structures to them and so on, and said, just go and research and see what insight you can gather from this data. And it was quite a successful project.
And also, you probably integrating biometry to your solution.
Correct.
Especially retina of an eye, because it's one of the unique features in human being.
So we do that extensively already. I think especially in the safety space and so on, we have driver-facing cameras and we monitor fatigue. So again, and not only, but from the way that you blink and how often you blink and so on, we can determine your level of fatigue and so on. In fact, I engage with it is frightening where this is going. I engage with a group of people from Stellenbosch University that has now formed their own research group, and they're focusing more on the insurance industry, but they thought there might be some applicability to us, and they've now developed a wearable technology where they mine information around your body biometrics. Sorry, I just want to switch this off. Around your body biometrics, where they say they can predict with a high degree of certainty when your life will end with a 10-year accuracy if you don't change your lifestyle, And this is the kind of information that they're exposing your insurance companies to.
So I think also on that, using those sensors in conjunction with our own sensors, we can start to make sense of things like fatigue on mines and that kind of thing. And so I think, to come to your question earlier about can we detect guns and that kind of thing, I think the proliferation of sensors is what's going to drive that kind of innovation. The more sensors we put out there, the more we're going to be able to detect, and the more predictive we're going to be able to get.
Correct.
You focused a lot on postgraduate
Yes.
and research in university.
Yes.
I would like to know, your postgrad person might read the data or design, innovate, but somebody has to build the design.
Yes.
And so that's why I was asking, at which levels? Is it throughout the spectrum of different levels of learning? Your TVET college type person, your person in a short course, unemployed person maybe wanting to learn a particular skill, would that all fit? And especially the younger generation that are totally tech-lit, irrespective. So my interest would be in terms of an institutional type. Is it only a postgraduate? I would be interested to know who innovates and who wins the prize. Is it only a postgraduate researcher?
No.
Or maybe it's a techie?
No, so in the example I used with our idea trigger system, it was a call center agent in the first year that won. This year it was an electronic engineer, but last year it was a call center agent that won with their idea.
So coming back to the point, so it's a company that has managed to integrate all of these things.
Yes.
And everybody's knowledge, information, innovation, creative thinking, from your highest level of postgrad reading data right down to your person who's able to. And I think probably that could be one of the success factors of the company, and that is sort of that internal integrated thing, which again would speak to Raymond's PhD. So how did your company integrate all of these people, technologies, knowledges, skills, etc.? How do institutions respond? And is that one of the success factors? And I think it would be. So that's where I was driving to try and link.
And I think one of the so as a sort of a federated group, we all did our own little thing, right from So typically those programs we will start at school level and we'll sponsor science laboratories and mathematical learning in townships and so on as part of our CSI programs and so on. And then, each company had their own versity programs that they ran. But I think, with Mtetu Nyati coming on board, he's got a new vision for the group, and he's now sort of driving us into a one Altron strategy. And I think we'll harmonize all of these programs, but they're all happening in pockets throughout the group. But hopefully we'll be able to harmonize it now and bring it into a program that we can drive it. Have those promising students at the institutions where we're teaching science and maths or whatever, and help them through their journey through.
Okay, so thank you very much. If there's no further questions, we'll wrap up. But before we do, we just want to thank you on behalf of the Institute. I was trying to think, we use the word be remarkable at DaVinci, and all our DaVincians we consider to be remarkable because of their unique characteristics. So I was trying to think, the way you've spoken about your organization, what words would I attribute? And I think you can all add, but some of them were certainly robust. Just the way that you engage and the sort of things and the technologies you engage with. Definitely enlightening. I don't think anyone can say that we haven't been enlightened by something. You're certainly a mover. Shifting everything around, so I think that's huge. Agile without question, which is something that's a core tenet to DaVinci. Remarkable without doubt. And then I would say kinship, and I use that word for the K, not because K is a difficult word to find things with, but just the way that you are shifting towards more about the people and trying to actually ensure that you shift from the technological aspect to now some of Dr. Lloyd's points around like how we help people going forward, and Prof. Singh's points as well. And then definitely I would say that you are analyzers, because you analyze, as you said, continuously. The B for business leaders. And L, I think definitely for longevity. If you look at your organization and the way you've traversed time, I think that longevity is definitely something that you have. And lastly, I would without doubt having you, I know you've participated in TT100 over the years, is exceptional, because you take things to a totally different level. And on behalf of DaVinci, we want to thank you not only for your participation today, but your general interest in our brand and your involvement also in our business awards program. And to just, I'll hand over to Prof to thank you, but that's what I'd just like to say on our behalf.
Thank you very much. Thank you.